The National Desk, America's News Now.
Hamas is committed to releasing another 20 women and children over the next 2 days. We would, of course, hope to see the pause extended further.
A tenuous truce keeps hold in the Middle East as more hostages are set to be freed. Will any Americans make the cut? But while fighting pauses in Gaza, the United States sees an increase in possible hate crimes stemming from the conflict.
The ATF and the FBI are investigating the tragic shooting of 3 men of Palestinian descent in Vermont.
And the medical field is already shrinking. Just how bad it will get in terms of a doctor shortage over the next decade. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amira David, and this is the National Desk. As we come on the air, Israel and Hamas have agreed to extend their fragile truce by 2 more days as the last handover of hostages under the original ceasefire deal is now complete. 11 hostages are back in Israel, but both sides tonight have kept the window open for more hostages to be freed with an extension. As part of that secondary deal, Hamas, it is expected to release an additional 20 hostages, and Israel expected to release an additional 60 Palestinians that are currently being held in Israeli jails. So far, in the 4 days of this pause, Hamas has released more than 50 hostages, and over 100 Palestinians from Israeli jails have been returned back to Palestine. All of those women and minors, and some of which had been detained in Israel without charges. Meantime, we are getting the first look at freed American Israeli 4-year-old Abigail Eden and her reunion with family members. 2 other American women, meantime, initially expected to be freed in the latest grouping, were not. U.S. officials providing an update on the Americans held.
We think the number is, it's less than 10, probably in the neighborhood of, about 8 to 9. But we don't necessarily have firm, solid information on each and every one of them.
As hostages return to Israel and reconnect with loved ones, many expressing relief, others beginning to describe what life was like in captivity. Our Atra al-Nashar reports.
As hostages are released, we're learning about the conditions they endured and still exist for those who remain in Hamas captivity.
Very little food, very little water. They came back very, very slim.
Ahal Besserai's teenage niece and nephew were released on Saturday. He says they were held in the room of a house with another woman. Family of other released hostages also say their meals were scarce, often just bread and rice. Meager nutrition, especially for the elderly and children. Like 9-year-old Emily Hand, seen here.
Lost a lot of weight from my face and body, but generally doing better than we expected.
Accounts of sleeping on rows of plastic chairs and sometimes waiting more than an hour to use a bathroom. In late October, 85-year-old Yoheved Lifshitz and 79-year-old Nurit Cooper were released. Hamas says due to their health, Lifshitz said while they were held, a doctor would visit them every few days with medication. But for 84-year-old Elma Avraham,
my mother did not deserve to come back like this.
Her daughter says she was severely medically neglected, left without necessary medication, returning home wounded and unconscious.
She arrived with a pulse of 40, with a body temperature of 28 degrees.
Equivalent to about 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Then there's the mental anguish. Psychoanalyst Merav Roth says trauma of being held hostage is compounded by the violence of October 7th. Treatment, she says, can't wait.
That's what we do with post-traumatic stress disorder. We take care immediately because the first days are crucial.
These hostages are returning home to learn for the first time that some of their loved ones were killed on October 7th or are still being held hostage by Hamas.
And Atra, Israel has a protocol for how they're handling the hostages when they're returned. What can you tell us about what that's like for them?
Right, so first they'll go through an initial check and then be transported to one of 6 hospitals in Israel. Now, the government's put together medical files for every single person held hostage, so they've got the data they need based on who's released. And an IDF soldier has been assigned to each child or family. And Amira, I want to read you this quote from the Welfare Ministry because I think it encapsulates just how much trauma and how delicate the situation is, especially for the kids. It says, quote, and these are instructions, quote, if the children who are without one or both of their parents ask questions like, where is mom or where is dad, soldiers should not answer these questions, even if they know the answers. Keep in mind, again, a lot of these kids, even adults, don't know the extent of what happened on October 7th like the rest of the world does. And the goal here seems to be they do not want to re-traumatize them.
Incredibly difficult conversations, I imagine. Ashra al-Nashar reporting for us in D.C. Thank you so much. And as for Gazans, tonight hospitals and doctors working in overdrive during the pause to restock and prepare for when Israel's military campaign resumes. A conflict that hasn't only taken lives, but also limbs. One surgeon today revealing rocket fire has meant hundreds of amputations for children.
My estimate is that there are now between 700 and 900 children with amputations of limbs. In some of whom multiple limbs have been amputated.
Meantime, here at home, with rising anti-Muslim sentiment in the country connected to what's happening abroad, a hate crime being investigated in a shooting that left 3 Palestinian-American college students hospitalized in Vermont. This as a suspect in the case has been arrested and arraigned. Burlington, Vermont police, they are revealing this photo of 48-year-old Jason Eaton, who they believe shot and killed those, or shot and injured, I should say, those 3 men as they walked down the street wearing traditional Palestinian scarves. The 3 students, Hisham Aratani, pictured here, shot in the spine and now in serious condition. Tahsin Ali Ahmed shot in the chest, and Kinan Abdul Hamid shot in the glute. Those 2 in stable condition. Today, police said they had linked the gun in the Vermont suspect's apartment to casings found at the scene of the shooting. Eaton has pleaded not guilty. As we learned, President Biden has been briefed on the matter.
These students were taking part in a uniquely American tradition, gathering with family and loved ones to celebrate Thanksgiving. They should be back in school with their classmates, not in a hospital room.
And turning to Louisiana, where the Baton Rouge Police Department is offering $2,000 for any tip that leads to the capture of 2 teens, both of whom are wanted for murder. David Atkins and Willie Jackson, both 17, escaped from the East Baton Rouge Juvenile Detention Center on Saturday night. It is not clear how they managed to get free, but Atkins, who's on the right there, had already escaped custody from the center just 2 weeks ago on November 14th before being recaptured shortly thereafter. A 4th person has been found dead after a landslide last week in southeast Alaska. The state's Department of Public Safety says search crews found the body of a missing 11-year-old girl after her parents and sister were found dead earlier on. 3 of her family members. Officials say 2 other people are still missing. And roughly 45,000 students in the Portland area were back in school today as a tentative agreement was reached to end a teacher strike that started on November 1st. Students had missed 11 days of school this month. The new contract needs to be voted on by teachers before it can be ratified, but classes, they will resume while that vote takes place. The White House announced today it is pouring billions of dollars into strengthening America's supply chains. But in that batch of spending is also more money for helping the car industry move toward electric vehicles. So why do some industry experts say the federal government's investment in EVs isn't paying off? The National Desk's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman takes a closer look.
Come on, jump in and give you a ride to Washington.
President Biden has long seen himself as a champion for the electric vehicle industry and going more green when it comes to American energy. But while the ideas may be there, are the buyers. The government may be pushing electric cars, but customers aren't keeping up, as industry experts are quoted saying there are more than 114,000 EVs currently collecting dust on car lots. According to a study by the Texas Public Policy Foundation, due to federal government aid to the industry, American taxpayers are on the hook for a staggering $50,000 for every electric vehicle sale, or $22 billion annually. And that doesn't include the $7,500 tax credit Uncle Sam is offering electric car buyers.
The other huge uncertainty here is for how long will these tax credits be around? The only real way to figure out sort of if the math pencils out or not, it's a market test. It's fundamentally a question of, do people want these things or not, and at what price point?
Yet a White House proposal would in theory result in half of all U.S. cars being electric or plug-in hybrids by the year 2030. In its continued fight against pollution and the fossil fuel industry, the White House on Monday announcing $275 million to go in part toward advanced energy programs, which will include producing more EV batteries.
What's next? What can we do? What must we do to keep making progress?
That on top of money already secured in the infrastructure law to provide $3.5 billion.
The accounting from Ford is something like losing between $30,000 and $60,000 per EV sold. That's not a sustainable practice for a for-profit company to be doing.
And as automakers slow production, hampering plans to build more charging stations, Washington may have to reassess the road forward. On Capitol Hill, Scott Thuman for the National Desk.
Well, coming up, record sales on holiday deals brings new threats to consumers. What to watch out for to protect your identity. Medical professionals are leaving the field and their replacements are not coming fast enough. Just how dire will the doctor shortage become in the next decade? And then artificial intelligence, it is redefining our way of life. And the dictionary is now taking notice how AI impacted our new word of the year. Stay with us. Well, Black Friday online spending hit a record $9.8 billion in the U.S. According to an Adobe Analytics report, that's up 7.5% from where we were a year ago. An analyst with the company saying the best-selling categories were electronics, toys, and gaming items. But in-person shopping also saw increased traffic, up 4.6% over last year's total. In-store and online, top sellers were whichever products had the best discounts. The report found $79 million of the Black Friday sales were part of a buy now, pay later flexible payment method. And sales continue today on Cyber Monday, but while many shoppers are buying online, cyber criminals are busy trying to steal your information and infiltrate companies that collect it. The National Desk's Kyra Purvis has more.
The Better Business Bureau reports online scams are occurring 33% more often this year compared to last year. While scams are on the rise, Carl Bates, the president of the Alabama Better Business Bureau, says shoppers should stay vigilant while surfing the internet this holiday season.
We're all attracted to a good deal, and that's where you got to be careful to take your time, do your research, look at the reviews on each site, make sure that you're getting what you expect.
Scammers often use social media or emails to initiate online scams. These commonly include a fake website link similar to a big box store's website. But Bates says there are key differences a shopper should pay attention to.
Make sure the spelling's correctly. Like Target does not have an S on the end of it. We've seen that already where it's targets.com, and that's a scammer's website. Also be careful of any of the stores that show an outlet site, which a lot of times is not the official site from the manufacturer or the retailer.
Before purchasing from a site, a shopper should locate a contact number and company address on the website. This information is usually left off from a scammer's website. Also, price check deals that are too good to be true. This can be a clear indication of a scam.
If the item looks too good to be true, or if it's a really popular item for this holiday season and it's hard to find here locally, and you find it there and it's 50 or 75% off online, that's usually a tip-off that either they don't have it, won't be able to ship it in time for the holiday season, or that it's a scammer's website.
That was Kyra Purvis reporting. The final farewell for a former First Lady began this morning as members of the Carter family held a wreath-laying ceremony at Rosalind Carter's alma mater, Georgia Southwestern State University. Today was the first of 3 days of memorials for Mrs. Carter. A tribute service will take place tomorrow at the Glenn Memorial Church at Emory University. President Biden, First Lady Jill Biden, Vice President Harris, and First Gentleman Doug Emhoff are expected to attend, along with, of course, her husband, Jimmy Carter. On Wednesday, a private funeral service will take place at the couple's Baptist church. Pope Francis is cutting back on some of his appointments this week as the pontiff receives intravenous antibiotics for lung inflammation. The Vatican says he doesn't have pneumonia or a fever and is in recovery from this weekend. He was hospitalized on Saturday for precautionary reasons after coming down with the flu. Honda is recalling more than 300,000 vehicles, all because the seatbelt could be missing a key piece. It comes after Honda recalled nearly 250,000 vehicles just over a week ago, all because of a manufacturing error that could result in engine damage. Now, the latest recall includes newer 2023 and 24 Accords and HRVs. Without the missing piece, seatbelts may not work correctly and passengers may not be properly restrained in the event of a crash. So far, no reports of injuries related to the seatbelt recall. If your car is affected, Honda will notify you and says you'll be able to take your car to a dealer to have the seatbelt fixed free of charge. A doctor shortage in the U.S. is already a problem, and it is expected to get worse over the next decade, with a projected shortage of 100,000 physicians by the year 2034. Spotlight on America investigates how this impacts you as a patient.
Thank you, guys. How are you doing?
Dr. Heather DeRoos is a young physician in training.
Right, come on in.
She wanted to be a doctor for as long as she can remember.
Look, a doctor book.
That is Dr. DeRoos at Christmas at age 3.
What is that? Stethoscope.
Getting her very first doctor's kit.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else. It's really just the best job in the world.
After completing medical school, Dr. DeRoos matched for a pediatric residency at the University of Virginia Medical Center. But not all med students are so fortunate.
It's devastating. These people work so hard. We've all worked so hard and want this so much. And there's patients that need to be seen, yet we don't have enough spots for them.
In 1997, Congress passed legislation putting a cap on the number of graduate medical education positions, those residency spots, funded by Medicare. That was nearly 30 years ago. Since then, the population has continued to grow and age. Add to that physician burnout that worsened during COVID and more doctors nearing retirement, with 1 out of 4 now over 65. And you've got the supply and demand crisis we're facing today.
How worried do we have to be about this? I think we should be very worried. I mean, our health depends on us having enough physicians, and we don't have enough.
Michael Dill is a senior data analyst with the Association of American Medical Colleges. And according to their latest estimates, America faces a projected physician shortage of nearly 100,000 doctors nationwide by 2036.
Demand is going up and up and up, and supply is not keeping pace. And a big part of that is because of limits on the training capacity to produce new physicians.
The top 5 states expected to have the worst shortages by 2030: California, Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Georgia. Many of us as patients are already feeling the doctor shortage. Just trying to find a primary care physician for a physical can be tough, with many experienced doctors not taking new patients. And trying to book an appointment with a specialist, you often have to wait for months. And when it comes to urgent care, according to the AAMC, 1/4 to 1/3 of people seeking same-day care can't get it. Affordability used to be the #1 reason, but that's changed.
Now the #1 reason is they can't find a provider.
Bottom line is that right now we've got a problem. The problem is going to grow.
Arkansas Senator John Bozeman is pushing to lift the federal cap on residency positions. He's co-sponsoring bipartisan legislation. The Resident Physician Shortage Reduction Act would add 14,000 Medicare-funded slots over the next 7 years.
If you're sick, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. I think we're at the point now where people are realizing that we have to do something about this.
Time is a concern. It takes about a decade to train a doctor, and with the shortage now, young physicians like Dr. DeRoos are already facing long hours and an ever-increasing patient load. Congress did take a small step to chip away at the shortage during COVID. In 2021, they passed legislation to fund 1,200 more residency positions being added over the next few years. For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We are taking the pulse of America.
Tacoma police now searching for 22-year-old James Salanoa, the possible suspect in what police are calling a violent kidnap, rape, and robbery.
The crime that he committed was so egregious and so heinous. We want to get him off the streets before anyone else gets harmed or hurt by him.
Happening in the middle of the afternoon, this now dark parking lot is where the woman told police Salanoa threatened her with a gun, demanding she get in her car.
Yeah, it's horrible. I don't even want to walk in the parking lot by myself.
She then told police he drove her to a nearby location, raped her, and stole her vehicle.
It's not a good neighborhood. It's a terrible area.
The woman's car has since been recovered, but Salanoa remains on the loose. A distinctive identifier, these scars you can see on his hands.
I didn't know anything. We were working all day. It was a busy day. Anything could happen back there, so it was pretty scary.
Starting this week, there's an even greater chance boxes and bags will be stolen off your front porch. These videos were taken from 2 local neighborhoods and show why the Austin area is once again ranked in the top 10 worst metros for packages being swiped off porches.
That the holidays, especially everything that happens after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, leading all the way up to Christmas, brings an uprise in burglaries.
If a crook really wants your packages, a doorbell camera isn't likely to stop them. But the surveillance video gives police proof of a crime, a timeline, shows the suspects, and ideally, the license plates on their cars.
The best thing that someone can do is not allow themselves to be a victim of that situation by letting their packages be out there for too long.
She said that she had thrown a cup of yogurt at lunch, and I asked, well, if you were out at a restaurant, would you do that there?
And I was like, I've never really been to a restaurant. I don't really have a family. I'm in a group home.
Raven says she had been in the foster system for years before she had met her now parents. Jason went home and told his wife Mary Beth about Raven. They weren't able to have kids of their own, but the day they met Raven, they loved her as their own.
They say that a mother falls in love with her child at first sight, and I can remember Raven walking into that room that day, that scared little kid, and I just knew in my heart, this is what's supposed to be.
Where do you think you would be right now if you did not have them?
Honestly, I wouldn't be alive.
All right, well, coming up here, the 2023 Word of the Year. That's truly a sign of the times. We are back after this. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary has published its 2023 Word of the Year, and this year the word is authentic. Authentic. And it's not just about being real, but rather knowing what is and isn't, especially in today's digital space. Officials at Merriam-Webster say searches using the word authentic increased this year, along with growing interest in artificial intelligence, its possibilities, its potential risks, especially with the prevalence of deep fakes and, of course, all those filters on social media. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.